and start our day. Thanks so much. And just as Irene mentioned in the chat, that was a special requested song by our guest speaker today, Officer Moani Makaiwi. So thank you so much for that. My name is Claire Callison. I'm the Senior Director of Operations for Austin Pets Alive. And I'm joined with Irene today as our co-host, who's our grant specialist from Maddie's Fund. So what a wonderful way to start the day. And we have a wonderful presentation, amazing presentation. So we'll jump right into it. But I wanted to start with a question of the day, and hopefully it's pretty fitting for this time of the year. But how do you all decompress, unwind, or relax after a busy day? Go ahead and put your answers in the chat. And selfishly, I'm looking for some self-care ideas myself. I've been diving into that all weekend. The pool and wine. Love it. Good way to start. So if you're just joining us, our question of the day is, how do you decompress, unwind, or relax after a busy day? Irene, I don't know if you have any ideas for me. I am looking for myself right now.
I always use these opportunities to plug the Journey You Own and Dr. Dorothy Robertson's meditation gatherings that are free. I don't even think you have to register anymore. And then I am just starting to learn Tai Chi with my mom, and that's like meditation in motion, and that is a lot of fun as well.
I love that. I'm seeing lots of great ideas in the chat. I'm making a sort of mid-year resolution to walk. I have 4 dogs, but one of my dogs every day. So we get just a rotation, but it forces me, even when I'm tired, just go out there and take a walk. And it's really helped just clear my mind at the end of the day or going into the day.
Oh yeah. I think a lot of us will have pets on this list, right? Or
yeah.
Snuggling. I saw snuggling. I definitely like going to my colleague Dr. Sheila Segerson's house and like throwing the ball with all the dogs together, and that rhythmic like fetching just clears my mind too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm getting lots of great ideas. You all are on it. Love it. Good job in the chat.
Oh, we
lots
have
of
a
books.
Lego builder.
Yeah, I saw Legos pop up. Yeah, good reminder to turn the phone off. Been trying to take Jose's advice even before the day starts, just like take a minute before you launch looking at your phone. So I'm trying to do that. That's really hard for me. All right, great. Well, I want to make sure we have plenty of time for our wonderful program today. So we will start into national updates. If you feel free to unmute, or you can put your update in the chat. If you could just keep it under a minute so we have enough time to get to everyone. But I am going to move it to national updates and open for that now. No national updates. I see Amber in the chat, just reminding on the monthly giveaways. Last call. Anyone have a national update? Feel free to unmute. Everyone spent maybe after Expo. Got it all done. All right. No updates. Okay. All right, then I'll hand it over to you, Irene. That was a rare quiet Monday for us. If anybody changes their mind, feel free to use the chat.
Thank you, Claire. So today's presentation is entitled A Komo Mai with Officer Moani Makaiwi from Maui Humane Society. And as Maui Humane Society's Humane Enforcement Resource Officer, or HERO, Moani will discuss the animal rescue response from the tragic Lahaina wildfires of August 8, 2023. Maui Humane Society served as the emergency response agency for animal rescue, and Officer Makaiwi's natural leadership and family connection to Lahaina were instrumental in saving so many lives. Despite challenges due to burn zone access and limited resources, more than 880 animals were rescued from the burn zone in the months following the devastation. Moani, it is an honor to have you here. Thank you for the song selection. The floor is yours.
Aloha, aloha everybody. Aloha kakayaka, good morning. Mahalo for having me this morning. Um, it's an honor to be or to have been asked to come here and speak today. Being a Pacific Islander, being a Kanaka, especially in times of, disasters, I feel that it's deep rooted within myself. I was raised on Molokai and Maui because of divorced parents. But, we are taught to give. And it is one of those things that, in not only our schools, our, kula or our ohana in our own families, you are taught that it's your kuleana, right? Regardless of your cultural background, regardless of what ethnicity you are. So I think, with the Lahaina disasters, it came, it was weird because we had multiple fires going on. And this was before Lahaina even had its first fire, because really it was like the second fire for Lahaina that devastated that whole downtown area. But at the same time, we did have, I think at the time we had three. We had three other fires that had been going on prior to that day. We had an upcountry, we called it the upcountry fire, which was our Kula and Omaopio fire. And then we also had our Kihei fire, which is our south side of the island. And then Lahaina, which is our west side of the island. We are located centrally, so more on the south side of Maui. And at that time, we were kind of short staffed. We had a lot of officers that do live up in our Kula area or upcountry area. So they were in the midst of, evacuating their home and their pets. And a lot of those officers upcountry have large animals such as horses, cattle, sheep, pigs, all the good stuff. So Wednesday, it was, I don't know how to say it. It was ominous, I guess. I want to say. When I came into work, it was actually my Monday, that Wednesday, and the night before, we had our first dog that came in from Lahaina through one of our AMR, our medics. They were changing shift, and one of the Lahaina fire squads had found a dog in the midst of, debris and the rubble. And so Katniss was our first dog that came on out from Lahaina. But the next day it was, we were all trying to figure out, okay, we have multiple fires going on. Lahaina, wasn't really thought about or really spoken, I should say, because I don't think anyone thought Lahaina, what happened would have happened, if that made, we never in my wildest dreams would I have ever thought that Lahaina's devastation would be what it is. Um, you know, but at the same time, because my family is from Lahaina, so while working short staff, and my folks, it was my parents, and my mom was actually on Facebook Live. And she was, typical mom with her phone. She's like this. And she's sitting in the passenger seat, just like nothing. And she's just like panning around and going, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that ember. Oh, that's a big one, oblivious of, the danger she's in, oblivious. And my dad's like, oh, there's a lot of traffic. But me on the other end, on the receiving end of watching it, I'm just seeing all this smoke and they're not paying attention to what's behind them. And behind them, they were stuck downtown of Lahaina. If anyone's been there, that's where 505 Front Street is, the famous Front Street. And she was about a street over from Front Street. My dad had just picked her up from work, and they were stuck in deadlock traffic, surrounded by smoke, surrounded by embers just dropping, like, and you could hear them in her video. You could hear them like hitting the ground. You could hear some of the ember hitting the car. And at the same time, you're watching, the homes that are nearby just starting, to catch on fire. And there was a moment where my mom was panning her phone from left to right. And she didn't notice that in the back, there was black smoke coming towards their direction. It is one of those things where in that moment, I thought I was actually watching like a Netflix movie or something. Because I was like, how do you not notice that, And is this real? And then I thought, oh my God, my parents are stuck in traffic. Like, whoa, what am I going to do? Like, I'm here at work. And, I'm like, I felt like I was stuck. I was stuck between, going out there to my parents to get them out of harm's way, but yet also knowing the situation we here at Maui Humane Society were at, dealing with the other fires. And then all of a sudden, my mom's life went dead. At that time, we didn't know that, the cell phone towers, the radio towers, all of that went down. We didn't know that. We were just, wondering, like, oh, what's going on? And we were just lost, because we didn't know what was going on. But, at the same time, my background is law enforcement. I was a dispatcher for Maui Police Department for many of years, but I left to move to Arizona to take care of my grandmother. So, I had a lot of training in disasters just because of that career I had chosen at that time. And so that day, we were getting a lot of calls of injured animals. And in a sense, we were I want to say we were waiting to be called in. But, for whatever reason, I was just able to use my connections that I had with Maui Police Department in the past. And I was given information to the mayor's office. And, within, I want to say about 3 hours, 4 hours later, whom I reached out to in the mayor's office contacted me. And all he asked was, how many of you are going? I need your folks' first and last name. I need your vehicle description. I need your license plate. And I was like, that's it? He was like, yeah. I said, okay, let me get back to you. It ended up being my fiance and I who went out that night. We came to the shelter because I had left for the day by then. I came back to the shelter and my fiance brought our personal truck and I drove in with my work truck and we just loaded up as much as we could. So in my personal truck, we loaded over 2,000 pounds of food for dogs, cats, all of it, little critters, all of them. And then my work truck, because it's completely sealed, fiberglass kennels, I use my vehicle to hold blankets, towels, things that I didn't want to possibly, because I didn't know the state of Lahaina. So I didn't know if it was actively still burning, where embers would be able to light anything on fire, that would have been in the back of my personal truck. So both trucks were loaded and we set out that night and we drove in to Lahaina, I want to say about 9:30 that night. And we went through, I want to say 4 checkpoints. And it was, because I'm from Lahaina, and I know the old Lahaina, I know the surrounded by the Ke'awe trees, which is the mesquite trees. And not the new bypass, not all these new roads. So coming in that night, it was dark. It was weird because there was no wind when I drove in at all. It was like dead wind. And coming over the ridge, all you saw was like an orange glow. And the closer you got to the checkpoints, and they had, you know, the big, you know, spotlights, and you could see like this grayish haze. And it was the ash that was still up in the air. It was so thick. I mean, it was like a veil of driving through. But when we got in there, you know, half of the town was still on fire. Old neighborhoods that I grew up in that, you know, my family members owned homes, childhood friends, their homes were all destroyed. So I drove through though, and in my head, of course, my folks are my main priority, but in my head, I'm driving through, you know, devastation, and I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? What do I do? I'm one person, but what can I do now that will help in the end when I leave Lahaina? Because I knew there was gonna come a time where I was gonna get pulled out of Lahaina since I was by myself. And when I drove in, there were two areas of Lahaina that was still erect. Homes weren't devastated at all, were not touched. So one was Lahaina Luna Road. They call it Kilauea Mauka. So the homes up there were untouched, but it was pitch blackness. I mean, it was dark. And I drove through, but I didn't even see, you know, every street you see a cat or two, especially in Hawaii, you know. And that night I saw no cats at all. None. No dogs were barking, nothing. And I was whistling. And if you know anything about our Hawaiian culture, in Hawaii at nighttime, you never whistle. Never. But that night, I'm like, this is weird. Like, why is it so quiet? It's really quiet. The quietness was deafening. And nothing. I heard nothing. So then I continued on. And then the next section that was still erect, but two homes were burned, was Hawaiian Homes, Leali'i, which is Department of Hawaiian Homestead land. And my folks lived in there. So I immediately drove to my folks, their home. And, you know, no one in Hawaiian Homes except one person out of the whole community stayed back. And he had his garden hose and he was trying to help keep the two homes that were on fire, the embers at bay, so that the other homes wouldn't catch on fire that were nearby, including my mom's. And all of a sudden, I just started to see like little cats here and there. And so I drove around that neighborhood going street by street. And the cats slowly started to come out, you know, from their hiding spaces. And so my fiance and I just started to, you know, drop food. I'd use the cat litter containers because it was big enough, because I didn't know when I would be able to come back in that area. And so I wanted to start to feed them in a specific area, knowing in the future, you know, it'll help us with trapping. And so I started to do that. And then at the same time, then I started to hear dogs barking. So these homes are locked up, and, you know, you just never know what you're walking into on a normal day, let alone it's almost midnight and, you know, you hear a dog whining and you hear down the road another dog barking. And so I took it upon myself. I went in and, you know, we would help get, you know, some food and put down some fresh water, because a lot of their food and water that was outside, you could tell the family had left it earlier that day and was never able to come back in. And so I just put down new food and clean water. And if you're asking how I had clean water, well, I like to camp a lot. So we have our own 15-gallon drums. And when my fiance came, I told him to pack up our camping gear because I didn't know where we were going to be. So we had all of our 15-gallon drums filled with water that we brought in ourselves. And here we are, you know, filling up all these dog bowls. And then I had to think, how am I going to know? Because I knew once the sun came up, it was just going to be different. It was going to be a different type of chaos for myself. And so I needed that night to come up with a quick plan of how was I going to help myself visually while I'm surveying, while I'm driving during the daytime. So after putting down food for the cats and the dogs, especially at homes, I would take my business card. I took my business card, and thank gosh that I just got my brand new box. And, I just started to grab each card and I would duct tape them to the garage door. It was either the garage door or the front post of the front door. Something that while I'm driving on the street, I could visually just scan and go, oh, yep, I already been there. I can move on to the next house and the next house and the next house. So that's what I started to do. That initial first night, maybe, I don't know, an hour and a half into coming into Lahaina that night. And then I went over to the police department. I let them know, that they had an animal control officer in Lahaina and that I would be staying in Lahaina and that I will probably start heading outside of Lahaina town to go look for my folks. My dad worked for a hotel. He still does. And I was hoping that, they got out of the traffic jam that they were in earlier and that they were safe out there. So I notified them. I went over to our Lahaina fire station, also notified them. I had a radio, my handheld radio, and I said, hey guys, I'm going to turn off my radio about 1 o'clock tonight. I said, but I'll turn it back on at 6 a.m. But should you need me, I'll be in the Napili area because my family lives out there. So if anything, I'll be camping out in their front yard. But if you need me, send an officer there. So I gave them a few addresses of where I possibly would be at. And then I left for the night. Lahaina town itself, downtown Lahaina town was devastated from the fire. But anything outside of that, Kanapali into Honokawai, and then now you're heading into basically the Kapalua area. So the zip code for 96761, which is Lahaina, it has multiple small little cities within that zip code. So when you think of it as a whole, a lot of folks thought it was all of that zip code, but in reality, no, it wasn't. It was just our downtown that was devastated. And so that night I was able to go to my dad's workplace and, all the electricity was out for that whole area. And it went miles and miles without electricity. And it just so happened, my folks were able to get out and they went back to my dad's workplace and they sheltered them through, I think, for a whole month and a half. And so I was thankful and grateful. So, of course, the next day, waking up, it was new for me. I want to say my feelings prior, a couple hours prior to that, because when I came in, I just cried. Just driving in, just cried. And the grief and you could just, it was, when I drove in, it was like you could feel the sorrow in Lahaina town. You could feel the pain. You really could. And, being able to find my folks kind of helped me to now concentrate on my job, concentrate on, why, besides finding them, why I was sent there. And I set my fiance up in Napili Park. I wanted him out of the burn zone. I wanted him in a safe area, and it was far enough where I knew that I would not have to worry about him or my folks. And so we set him up. When I set him up at Napili Park, there was actually no hubs. You just had folks living, sleeping out of their trucks, and it was raining. It was raining so hard out in Napili. And you had these folks in the park with their kids in their trucks, and the parents are sleeping in the back bed while the kids are in the cab, and all I could offer was the progressive soup that we brought in for ourselves. I was just like, I had over thousands of pounds of dog and cat food, but nothing for humans. But looking at the situation, we had, I just opened up my cooler. We had a big cooler and it was just filled with soups. And I was like, here you go, passing out our soups. And my fiance is like, honey, what are we gonna do for ourselves? And I was like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I was like, these folks need it more than we do. And so we set him up with all of the tables, the pop-up tent to pass out everything and anything for anyone who, had evacuated with their pets with nothing. Down to leashes, collars, slip leads, cat litter, liner for the litter box. I mean, I had it all. I didn't know what I was going to use. I didn't know what I was going to give up, but I said, you know what? I'd rather take it than not have it at all. And also thinking of, okay, where are these folks going to be staying too? So after that was set up, then I went into Lahaina town, checked in with Maui Police Department, the Lahaina station. And then I went over to the fire department. And it was then when I realized that one of the captains that was still on duty was my cousin. And he just kind of looked at me. I looked at him and I'm like, you don't belong here. You don't belong here in Lahaina town. You belong out in the Pili. And he was just like, we got called in because Lahaina's station, half of their crew got pulled to the upcountry and the Kihei fire. So Lahaina side was on really, really short staff. And so we both acknowledged each other, and he turned around, told his crew, he's like, you see that truck, you see that driver, you see that officer. While you're in the burn zone, if you see anything that she needs to attend to, just let her know where. And you don't have to give her directions. Just tell her where. Whether you remember the business that where the animal's at, or whether you remember the streets. Just give her the information and she'll go. And so I asked my cousin, I said, okay, how would you like me to proceed? And he was like, hey, if they send you in, just stay on the road where you see our tire tracks. He's like, just stay on the tire tracks and you'll be fine. And I go, okay, what about the electrical wires, the phone lines and all that, the power lines? And he goes, they're not charged, but still, you want to stay where our tire tracks are at. I said, I got it. Perfect. I told them what station I'd be on the handheld radio, so they could also contact me via radio instead of just trying to, look for me, because I'm one person, so I was going to be everywhere and anywhere. So I went in. I got calls regarding injured cats and injured dogs. And, in all honesty, as much as I said in the beginning that I had, my past training, you're never prepared ever for the type of devastation, that happened that day. And I want to say, like, I kind of almost felt like I had to put blinders on while in Lahaina town, I'm not saying I didn't see what I saw and I didn't feel what I felt, but at the same time, here I am, I'm chasing, a half, singed dog, who wanted to come to me. But of course, while he's walking towards me, he stepped on something hot, or she stepped on something hot. And then, that just made her, them just turn and run. And I'm trying to, coax the dog back to me, or the cat. And I'm like, my boots gonna melt into this paved road? Like, it, because it felt like it, and the vehicles, the buildings, the structures, that had collapsed and fallen. The heat was just so immense. It was like being in one of those kilts. If you've ever made, went up to one of those blowing glass shops, it's like standing right next to that oven, but literally right up in that oven. And I thought that my boots, while I'm trying to save these animals, that am I gonna, am I gonna be one of those victims too, where I have to use my radio to call for help, but I did the best that I could with what I had, and all I could think of was my community, my lahui, my ohana, And then, just being there present, and seeing the devastation of lives lost, seeing animals, that had perished, and you can tell they were trying to flee. They were trying to get to the ocean themselves. But I'm glad though, for me, in a sense, would I do it again? Yep, without a doubt. Because I take it, I feel like it's like my kuleana, we're all stewardships of this land. And for me, it was more than just my community. Community for me means family. On this island, so Maui County has 3 islands, and I'm pretty much related to everybody some way, somehow. you know. So when people say community, no, for me, that definition is ohana. It's my family. It really is. And I was grateful that I was that one to have gone in first. And obviously, all I could do was fill up my truck with as many animals that I could, whether they were restrained already by the fire department or the police department, or whether by me restraining them myself. And I would just drive out, fill up my truck, drive out to Maui Ocean Center, which is back on this side. And I had used my stray confined forms. Again, thinking on my own, So I was like, how am I gonna relay all this information? Because I'm just, collecting all these injured animals basically, and then I'm the one, me, or it's from the police department or the fire department. And I'm like, oh shoot. So I just started to use my straight confined forms, and I would put down the information. Like if it was the police department, I just put down my MPD. I'd put down the location where that cat was found, put a description, check for microchip, and how bad are the injuries. And I would have to prioritize, I can fill my truck up with probably, I don't know, 20 cats, easy. But at the same time, I had to prioritize their injuries too. And so I would come out with a food truck and pass, the information with the animal to my fellow colleagues that were on the opposite side of checkpoint, and turn around and head right back in. The first day, I came out 5 times. But then also I noticed, I'm like, wow, like nothing's open, and so I think it was my 3rd round out. I had contacted one of my coworkers, and I said, hey, I'm coming out. I'm going to give you my debit card. Can you meet me? And can you go to Costco's? Can you go to Costco's and pick up as much produce you can and fruits? I was like, especially fruits and cases of water. That would be great. And so when I dropped off, went back into Lahaina, and then when I came out 2 hours later, I gave her, another round of animals. And then she was like, here you go. Like I had produce up the wazoo for my truck and cases of water. And I didn't have a cooler, but because my kennels have AC, I went to the gas station right there at Maui Ocean Center. And I went in and I just bought, I think, about 10 or 12 bags of ice and just threw them in one of my kennels and drove in. And I was passing out, fruits, and vegetables, and because locals are going to start using everything that they have had in their freezers, and still no electricity, no nothing. And so I figure, okay, you know what? I'll at least have some healthy balance, to my family members, especially my aunts and uncles that are diabetics, and then pass out everything else to those that were, just me passing them by. I became also the 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 news, the radio station, because you had all these folks that were here visiting, staying at a hotel, and they weren't getting any information. All they knew was that Lahaina had burned down, and you had people alongside of the main highway, and they're all like this. I see them all on the side of the road with their hands up trying to catch a signal, and I'm like, that's not gonna work, guys. Like, we have nothing. This is the worst area to not have, electricity or, internet or anything like that. I was like, but I can just update you guys with what I know right now, which could change in the next 5 minutes. But I can tell you what I know now. And that's what I did until, like, my director called me and she's like, Moani, I want you out. You need to come out now. And that was Friday afternoon. And so, of course, I wanted to buck the order. I'm like, no, don't pull me out. What do you mean? Like, no, you can't, you don't do this. Don't do this. But in the end, I was very grateful that she did. She did at that time. And then at the same time, though, when I did come out, there was already a crew that had come in that does this. They do disasters, and the professionals were here. And so when I came out, they were all in a meeting, and so I went in to just say, hey, I'm out, I'm here. And I got called into the meeting, and I think it was John. He was like, hey, can you tell me what you know and what you've been doing? So I told him everything. I'm like, hey, this is what you're going to be looking at. This is the areas of concern. This is where I've been feeding, knowing that we're probably going to have to trap these animals down the road. So this is where I've been feeding. And I had been able to, because I know Lahaina, it was easy for me to look at a map and go, hey, yep, here, yep, here. This is who I spoke to. This is who's watching, who I dropped food with so they can continue to feed. So I don't have to go back in that area. Here are some areas of concern in regards to dogs that were left in the residence that I couldn't get into. But I did leave some food by the doggy doors, but I ended up coming in with, now a group, of professionals that knew what needed to be done. Unlike me, I just was on the whim of thinking, okay, putting myself in the shoes of them coming in. Like, how would I want them to see what I've done without me have to detail every single home? And I was like, yep, this is all I did. If you see my card, that house is good until Sunday. You don't have to worry about that house. Like, I dropped enough food and water till Sunday. So I try to make it a little bit easier, in a sense for myself, not knowing that it would help in the end of the initial, going in for the search and recovery. So it was exhausting, that's for sure. But I'll do it all over again. All over again. Is there a question for me?
Moani, I'm reading through the chat and everybody is really feeling inspired. I think as a nice tribute, since we can't, and this is a great idea from one of our attendees that's listening in, since we're not in person and we can't stand up and clap and give you an ovation, I would love to ask anyone who's able, if you can just turn your camera on. I think it would be great so we can see faces, and feel free to do reactions. But I mean, no one can really prepare for the work that you did, and your heroics in those moments. And so we all just applaud you and thank you for all of your hard work and just bravery in that moment. So thanks all for coming on camera if you can, and just showing respect and love for Moani.
You.
You're amazing. I don't know if you can see everybody, but you have over 100 people here.
I was going off camera just to dab my eyes, but
Fighting it.
yeah, it was to your family, to your fiance, so many of your relatives involved in this response effort. We just thank you. Mahalo. From the bottom of our hearts. Oh, we did have one question. Were there first responders at the scene to help with people and pets?
On scene, you had well, when I went in, you know, everything you had the police officers running the checkpoint at that time. It was not the National Guards. National Guards didn't come in yet. So it was Lahaina police officers that were running all the checkpoints. And like I said, before I could even get into Lahaina town itself, I had to cross, I think it was 3 before I could really get into the town itself. And then in town itself, there was another 2 on the main highway. And then some of the major residential areas, then you had an officer at each of the main like roads turning off of the main highway into them. And you had the fire department. I mean, they were just constantly just driving back and forth. And you know, it's one of those things where you see it in the movies, like the movie Fire Country. Okay, Fire Country, take that movie or that series, and you see how when they go in, right, and they're just covered in ash and soot, and like they're just covered. And that was our law enforcement. That was our first responders, all of them, including those at the checkpoints. You know, their vehicles, their uniform, their face, all of it was wearing everything that they have gone through. And still, you know, like, you know, you have, you know, some of the fire department from Lahaina town itself, that had to watch their homes burn down. They have nothing, but they stayed in that vehicle to continue to go look for victims, to continue to help transport people out, you know, in the midst of, you know, the town burning down. I came in afterwards, you know, almost 24, little over 24 hours. I came in afterwards, and the town was still, you know, there was an apartment building, 5 stories, and it was the 5th and 4th story was gone. All you had left was the third and the third, the second, and the first floor. That was it. And it was still, you know, collapsing while we were driving in. And you had all these homes that were still on fire, and all you saw was, you see the fire department, the tanker truck, the water tanker driving by slowly, you know. I mean, what do you do? You know? At that point, I think all of us, when I drove in that night, was just, you know, to be honest, when I drove in that night, I was like, oh my God, I don't want to hear somebody crying. You know, I was like, I don't. And, you know, I didn't go down Front Street when I initially came in, because nighttime, number 1, pitch darkness. And I'm like, no, you know, I just stayed on the outer perimeter of, you know, the burn zone, basically. And went to, you know, where in my head, you know, I was like, there has to be animals alive. There has to be, you know, this has to be, you know, this cannot be like everything was destroyed, you know? So coming in the next day and seeing, you know, the fire department, and just, you know, seeing and feeling, you know, how all the first responders were feeling, you know, overwhelmed, sorrow, grief, loss, you know. And for me, while driving by, you know, I could see some of these homes, and I'm like, that is my aunt's house. Oh my gosh, in my head, I'm like, God, I hope she got out. And days following, I had lost a few family members and, a few family friends that, I grew up or they worked with my parents or my grandparents. And you just try to do your best. You just try to be better the next day, every day. Just try to find something positive and, take that step forward. I try not to linger as much. And honestly, for me to be crying now, that's a lot. Because in the beginning, there was no crying at all. But
I bet well you have the adrenaline and things you the fast thinking and on your feet and just it's amazing how you had supplies in your car anyway, but I'm sure you didn't even have a chance to really process your emotions, which that was one of the questions, and how your emotions now are after all of this, which you touched on.
well, it took I want to say it was probably almost 2 months after. I just noticed that the little things, things that we could normally tolerate, in general, things that we could just go, whatever, and not take it to heart, right? I noticed that I was really taking it to heart and I was taking it personally and I was not able to let go. And I'm normally one of those that is so easygoing and I am like I always, try to find that positive regardless. And I just found myself not being positive anymore. And I knew it was taking a toll on me. I knew it was taking a toll with me working and being on the job also. And, thank God my fiance, oh God, I love him because, he understood. He didn't see what I saw, but, he saw the perimeter when we drove in and when we drove out. And to him, he could only imagine the things that I saw down on French Street. And then watching the news, when we came out, obviously we didn't have any internet connection or nothing. So we knew nothing of what was going on outside, just like everybody else. The only difference was I could go to the police station, when I checked in and they would update me with what they knew, what they were given, you know. So when we came out, our phones, it was as if like we were off the grid, which we kind of were, but we're off the grid, right? And then you finally turn your cell phone on or from airplane mode and then you land and you turn it on and you have like beep, 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 like it's just going, right? And we're like, wow, what's going on? Like what did like, oh shoot, not knowing people were like, hey, did you know this is going on in Lahaina? Hey, did you know? And then there was a video of me on not a video, I guess I was on the news. And if anybody has been in this type of situation, I'm laughing now. But at that time I was really scared. Because someone said, hey Moani, you were on the news. And the first thing that came to mind was, oh shoot. I wonder if that guy was because I yelled at a guy. He was down on Front Street and he was taking pictures and recovery didn't even start yet. And I'm down there on Front Street and this guy is just like talking, like he's taking a video and I'm like, really? Like, really? There are people still here. Really? You're going to do that? And of course, I said a few words. And that's what I instantly thought when everybody was like, hey, Moani, you're on the news. I was like, oh no. My boss is gonna get mad. I better call my boss.
It
But
wasn't that though. It wasn't that. Okay. It was for all your heroics, I hope.
oh no, but I mean, you had people, like seriously, you had people that walked all the way from the hotels to just want to be the first ones in to take a video, you know, to take pictures. And I
Yeah.
was just like, how dare you? Like, you can turn around and go back to your hotel. Go back. You need to get out of here, you know? But I think
We
with you know, with all the trauma, it's just reaching out. You know, don't be afraid. Ask for help, because I did.
No, those are very, very wise words. We are at time, and I just wanted to thank you again. It's a pleasure to celebrate Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander month with you and conclude this month with you. Next week, everyone, we won't have a call. It is Memorial Day, so we hope you enjoy that long weekend. But Officer Makaiwi, thank you so much for today, and we
Mahalo
wish,
for having me.
of course, please reach out.
Definitely.
And any questions that were not answered, we will feed them into the Maddie's Pet Forum so you can connect to Moani there. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Moani,
much.
incredible. Wow. Thank you.
Mahalo.
Thank you, Moani.
So much love.